I don't know who this person is, but Hot Topics is pertaining to the shooting I did
I wouldn't feel no way if Adam actually didn't do that. Just gonna keep it authentic with y'all. That's just me.
This might be the craziest thing to happen in hip-hop media in years, and I don't say that lightly. We're talking about a no-jumper co-host, a man who was sitting at that table every single week, cracking jokes, talking street politics, building a whole fan base, getting locked up by the LAPD on a felony murder charge. But here's where it gets even crazier. Adam22, the founder, the face, the boss of No Jumper, may have played a role in helping the feds connect the dots on his own co-host. I'm not even lying to you. And on top of all that, this dude, Jefe, before his arrest, he posted a cryptic video on Instagram that pretty much told the world something was coming. He basically exposed himself without even knowing it. So buckle up, gang, because today we're going deep on the rise, the streets, the murder charge, and the moment Adam22 may have accidentally snitched on his own man. Let's get into it. All right, first things first. If you don't know who Jefe is, let me put you on. And for those of you who watched him every week on No Jumper thinking this man had fully left the streets behind, oh bro, this story is gonna hit different. Jefe's government name is Maurice Shellman. He's from South Central Los Angeles, and when I say South Central, I don't mean the gentrified version. I mean the real, raw, uncut South Central where the streets don't play games and your decisions at a young age can define the rest of your life. And for Jefe, those decisions came early. On the No Jumper podcast itself, Jefe opened up about his past in ways that, looking back now, feel almost prophetic. He talked about how he started running with people who were 5 to 10 years older than him. Not teenagers being teenagers, grown men, OGs, people who were already deep in the life before Jefe even hit high school. He said he really started at a young age, and his peers, they started gangbanging 3 or 4 years down the line, meaning Jefe was in it before most of his generation even caught on. His whole adolescence, and he said this himself, was back and forth in and out of jail, gun cases, stolen cars, gangbanging, the kind of rap sheet that builds up fast when you're running with the wrong crowd at the wrong age in the wrong zip code. But here's what's important. This wasn't just street posturing. This wasn't some rapper cosplaying the life for a video. This was a man who lived it, breathed it, and paid for it. No cap, the biggest price he paid came before No Jumper even entered the picture. Before the cameras, before the podcast, before the clout, Jefe served 8 years in federal prison on a RICO case. 8 years. For those who don't know, RICO stands for the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. It's the federal government's biggest hammer. They hit you with RICO when they believe you were operating as part of a criminal organization, and those cases are hard to beat. They don't just come for you on a RICO when you're a low-level guy doing small-time stuff. They come for you when they think you're embedded in something serious. And Jefe did that time. He served the sentence, he got out, and by his own account, he started looking at life differently. He said on the podcast that once he started gathering information, started having a better understanding of life, having a better respect for life, wanting to travel, wanting to be cultural, that's when he started respecting things more. That's when the turning point allegedly happened. Bro, that's actually a story you want to root for. A man from South Central did almost a decade in federal prison, came home and started making moves in media. That's redemption, that's the come-up story people celebrate. And for a while, it looked like that's exactly what Jefe was living. But gang, the streets don't always let you walk away clean, and that's where this story gets dark. So get this, Jefe didn't just stumble into No Jumper. Adam22 personally recruited him. And that's a detail that matters a lot when we get to the part where Adam starts talking to the press after the arrest. But let's back up first. Adam22, real name Adam Grand Maison, built No Jumper from the ground up into one of the most influential hip-hop media platforms on the internet. If you've been in the culture over the last decade, you know No Jumper. They broke artists before they blew up. They did interviews with rappers and street figures that nobody else in mainstream media would touch, and they built their whole brand on being authentic, being raw, being unfiltered. That's the lane. That's the brand. Adam brought Jefe into the fold around May 2025, just about a year before everything went left. And on paper, it made perfect sense. Jefe brought something to the table that no amount of money could manufacture. Real street credibility with a story to back it up. He'd done time, he'd come out the other side. He was articulate, he had charisma, and he could talk about the culture from a place of lived experience that connected with the audience. Jefe quickly became a fixture on the show. He was appearing alongside Adam22, Brick Baby, Lush One, and other rotating hosts, and his clips started moving. His takes were getting clipped up and spreading across YouTube, Instagram, and X. He was building his own fan base outside of music. People genuinely gravitated toward him. The subscription to his perspective was real. And outside the podcast, he was still dropping music, rap projects that reflected where he came from, South Central, the streets, the code, the culture. For all intents and purposes, Aunt Jefe was ascending. His media presence was growing. His name was getting bigger. By the time 2026 rolled around, he was one of the most recognizable faces attached to No Jumper. Y'all seeing this? From federal prison on a RICO case to building a whole media career in less than a few years. That's the trajectory everybody wants to see. That's the story people celebrate. But here's where it gets crazy, because something was clearly happening behind the scenes that the cameras never caught. Something that was about to blow the whole thing up. So get this, and I need y'all to really pay attention here, because this is one of those details that, in hindsight, is absolutely chilling. The day before his arrest, Aunt Jefe posted a video on Instagram. And it wasn't a music promo, it wasn't a podcast clip, it wasn't a hype post, it was cryptic, dark, the kind of video you post when you know something's coming and you're trying to get your mind right. In the video, Jefe talked about the devil working. He talked about trying to weather the storm. That's it. No specifics, no context, just a man who seemed like he was bracing himself for something heavy. Like he was steeling himself, like he knew the clock was ticking and he was making peace with what was about to happen. Now here's where Adam22's reaction to this clip becomes a whole storyline on its own. During the No Jumper podcast episode taping that happened on May 19th, the same day Aunt Jefe was arrested, the crew initially didn't even know what was going on. Jefe didn't show up to set. At first, the co-hosts were low-key trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. One of the panelists even said it could just be a regular situation and he'll tell us about it next time we see him. Bro, it was not a regular situation. As the episode progressed and more information started filtering in, references to robbery, homicide involvement, $1 million bail, the tone of the room shifted hard. This went from maybe he's just running late to, oh no, this is serious, in real time, on camera, for everyone to see. And then someone brought up that cryptic Instagram video Jefe posted the day before. When Adam22 watched it in context of everything that was now unfolding, he said the clip very much was in agreement with the kind of thing that you would allude to if you were in a legal situation. Adam said it felt like Ant was steeling himself for a legal battle or dealing with something difficult. No cap, that's actually crazy. This man posted his own warning signal on social media. Whether he knew the arrest was imminent, whether he'd been in contact with attorneys, whether he'd already been informed that law enforcement was closing in, we don't know. But the timing, the content, the vibe of that video, that was not coincidental. That was a man preparing. Chat, are we surprised? Because I genuinely am. All right, gang. Let's talk about the actual arrest, because the details here tell you everything about how serious this situation is. This wasn't a routine stop. This wasn't a misdemeanor that got blown up. This was a calculated, intentional takedown by one of the most elite law enforcement units in the entire country. On May 19, 2026, Aunt Jefe, Maurice Shellman, was taken into custody by the LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division. Now let me explain why that matters, because a lot of people hear LAPD and just think it's a regular arrest. The Robbery Homicide Division is not regular. This is the unit that handles the most complex, high-profile, and serious criminal cases in all of Los Angeles. When they come for you, they've been watching, they've been building a case. They don't move until they're confident they can make it stick. The charge? Felony murder. And just so everyone understands what that means in California, felony murder doesn't just apply to the person who pulled the trigger. In California, if you were involved in a felony that resulted in someone's death, whether you were the shooter or not, you can be charged with murder. The law casts a wide net, and the fact that they hit Jefe with a felony murder charge specifically tells you that the district attorney's office believes there's enough there to make this case serious. The bail? $1 million. $1 million. For context, that's not a number that gets set for petty crimes. That's not a number you put on someone the system views as a low flight risk. $1 million bail means the court views this individual as a serious danger to the community or a significant flight risk, possibly both. LAPD had him booked and processed at the LAPD jail, and as of the time this information was released, he was still sitting there behind bars. Bro, that's actually insane. You go to sleep on Sunday, you post a cryptic video about the devil working, and by Monday you're in LAPD jail charged with murder with $1 million bail. That's the kind of 24-hour spiral that changes a life forever. And here's the wild part. LAPD hasn't publicly released full details about the alleged murder itself. They haven't named a victim. They haven't outlined a motive. They haven't described what the alleged killing involved. The investigation is ongoing, which means whatever they have, whatever led them to Aunt Jefe specifically, they're keeping close to the chest while the case builds. But what we do know paints a picture that the system was already watching him. Now here's where I need y'all to really lock in, because this is the part of the story that's going to have people rewinding and replaying clips. Because when you go back and look at Aunt Jefe's public record, his own words, his own history, his own admissions on the podcast, there are red flags hiding in plain sight that, in hindsight, tell a different story than the reformed man we thought we were watching. Let's start with the obvious. Jefe was open about his past, like extremely open. He didn't hide the RICO case. He didn't avoid talking about gangbanging, about running with OGs, about guns and stolen cars and being in and out of jail as a teenager. In one sense, that authenticity is what drew people to him. He was real, he was transparent, he owned his history. But there's a thing in the streets that people talk about, self-snitching. It's when you say so much, put so much on record, that you end up creating a documented trail of your associations, your worldview, and your capacity for violence. And when you're talking on a podcast that has millions of views and is permanently archived on YouTube, every single word you say is evidence that can be pulled up in court. Aunt Jefe talked about gang politics. He talked about street code. He talked about having a better respect for life, which implies there was a time when he didn't. He talked about his adolescent years being defined by conflict, by guns, by people who would do whatever it takes to survive in South Central. All of that is now on record. All of that is now potentially part of a profile that prosecutors can use to build their narrative about who Morris Shellman is and what he's capable of. And then there's the Cryptic Instagram video. I keep coming back to this because it's significant. If you're a completely innocent man with nothing to hide, you don't post a weathering the storm video the day before your arrest. That's not what innocent people do. You do that when you're bracing for impact. You do that when you know something is coming. Which raises the obvious question. How long did he know LAPD was closing in? How long was he walking around with that weight on his chest before they finally put the cuffs on? The Robbery Homicide Division doesn't operate on impulse. These are methodical investigators who build timelines, gather evidence, work sources, and move only when they're confident. The fact that they arrested him now means the investigation had been ongoing, which means Jefe may have been living with the knowledge that a net was closing around him. And that Instagram post may have been the only way he could say what he couldn't say out loud. Y'all are not ready for this next part though, because when you cross-reference his past with this charge, the math starts to add up in a way that's uncomfortable. An 8-year RICO case, street ties that run deep in South Central, a podcast career built on openly discussing the life he supposedly left behind, and now a felony murder charge handed down by the elite division of LAPD. This isn't a coincidence. This is a pattern. And Aunt Jefe, in being so transparent on that podcast mic, may have unknowingly given investigators a roadmap to his character, a character they're now arguing is capable of exactly what they've charged him with. Okay, gang, this is the part of the story that has the internet going absolutely crazy. Because when Adam22 opened his mouth to the press about Aunt Jefe's arrest, the way he chose to word things had people raising eyebrows hard. And depending on where you stand, what Adam said was either completely innocent or the most calculated soft snitch move we've seen in the podcast world in a long time. Let's go through it step by step. First, within hours of the arrest going public, Adam22 went straight to TMZ. Now, some people clocked that immediately. Your co-host just got arrested for murder, and your first move is to give a statement to the biggest celebrity gossip outlet on the internet? Not just a tweet, not just an Instagram story with no words, an actual statement to TMZ, a text that got screenshotted and shared. And here's what he said. On his Instagram story, Adam shared a screenshot of the text he sent to a TMZ reporter. In the message, he wrote that honestly, he didn't know anything yet, so he wasn't of much value. Fine. That's understandable, but then he followed it up with this. He said Ant had been a great podcaster for the last year or so, and as far as he knew, he wasn't really in the streets like that anymore, so this was all a huge shock. Bro, let's break that down. As far as I knew. That's a phrase that does a lot of work in that sentence, because what Adam is essentially saying to the press, the same press that will relay this to law enforcement, to the internet, to everyone, is, I believed he had changed, but clearly I didn't know everything. That sentence isn't just expressing shock. That sentence is distancing. That's Adam22 making sure that whatever comes out about Aunt Jefe's alleged street activity, nobody can point the finger back at No Jumper and say you knew. And then the part where he says Ant wasn't really in the streets like that anymore. That one word implies that he was in the streets at some point, and that Adam knew about that history. He's not saying I had no idea this guy had a past. He's saying the past was known, but he believed it was over. The emphasis on anymore is the tell, because when you say someone isn't in the streets anymore, you're acknowledging there was a before. Now let's talk about what went down on the actual podcast episode that day. The crew, Adam22, Munchie B, and Lush are taping, and Aunt Jefe doesn't show up. At first, they don't think much of it. One panelist suggests maybe it's just a regular situation and they'll hear about it later. But as the information trickled in and it became clear that Jefe had been arrested specifically by robbery homicide with $1 million bail, Adam said on camera, almost casually, I would bet money that he got arrested or something. He said that before he even knew the full details, before the felony murder charge was confirmed. He said I would bet money on an arrest. Why would that be your first instinct unless you had context? Unless you knew enough about who this man really was to not be completely surprised that law enforcement came for him. And then when the Cryptic Instagram clip was brought up during the taping, Adam's interpretation of it was remarkably precise. He said it felt like Ant was steeling himself for a legal battle. He said it very much was in agreement with the kind of thing you would allude to if you were in a legal situation. That's not a vague reaction. That's someone connecting dots with confidence. That's someone who, even if subconsciously, understood the undertone of that video in a way that a casual fan wouldn't. Look, I'm not here to say Adam22 is a snitch in the traditional sense. I'm not saying he called up LAPD and gave them a tip. But what I am saying is this: the way he handled the press, the specific word choices, the immediate distancing, the as far as I knew and not really in the streets anymore framing, all of that told a story. A story that confirmed details about Aunt Jefe's past to the public while simultaneously shielding No Jumper from any association with what allegedly went down. Whether that was calculated or just the natural reaction of someone trying to protect themselves, the internet noticed, and the culture had thoughts. No cap, that's actually crazy to watch unfold in real time. So let's talk about what Aunt Jefe is actually facing right now, because this is where things get brutally real. In California, felony murder is not a charge you walk away from easy. The state of California takes this charge extremely seriously, and the sentencing ranges reflect that gravity. Under California law, a first-degree murder conviction can carry a sentence of 25 years to life. If there are special circumstances involved, and we don't know yet whether prosecutors plan to argue any, that could escalate to life without the possibility of parole. This is the kind of charge that ends careers, ends freedom, ends futures. The Robbery Homicide Division doesn't bring these cases to the DA's office unless they have something. These detectives are thorough. They know how to build a timeline. They know how to gather surveillance footage, cell phone records, witness testimony, forensic evidence. And given that they already had enough to go to a judge and get an arrest warrant, a warrant that came with a $1 million bail recommendation, the evidence isn't nothing. We don't know yet who the alleged victim is. We don't know the full circumstances of the alleged murder. LAPD hasn't publicly released those details, and that's standard protocol for an ongoing investigation. What we do know is that Aunt Jefe, a man who already served 8 years in federal prison, who openly discussed his past life in the streets, who posted a cryptic farewell to freedom Instagram video the day before his arrest, is now sitting in an LAPD jail cell facing one of the most serious charges in the California Penal Code. His future in media? Done for now. His music career? On hold indefinitely. The No Jumper chapter? Closed the moment those handcuffs clicked. And this is a man who, just a year ago, was building something that looked like a real second act. That's what makes this story hit so hard. It's not just a crime story. It's a cautionary tale about how quickly everything can unravel when the streets haven't really let you go, even when you think they have. And for all the people who watched Aunt Jefe on No Jumper and genuinely believed in his transformation, who rooted for him, who related to his story of coming home from prison and trying to build something real, this one hits different because sometimes the story you want to be true isn't the whole story. So get this. Adam22 didn't just lose a co-host. he potentially became a character in the story. And in a case this serious, nobody wants to be a character. Here's the thing that keeps circling in my head when I think about all of this. Aunt Jefe told us who he was. He sat in front of that microphone and he gave us his whole history. He didn't hide it. He didn't sanitize it. He said, I started young, I ran with OGs, I was in and out of jail, I had gun cases, I did RICO time. He said all of it. And he also told us about his growth. He talked about gaining a better understanding of life. He talked about wanting to travel, wanting to be cultural, wanting to respect things. He made it sound like the streets were behind him, and maybe in his mind they were, or maybe they never fully were, or maybe, and this is the darkest reading, those two identities were always living side by side, and it was only a matter of time before one of them came back to collect. The Cryptic Instagram video sits at the center of this for me, because that video, the way he talked about the devil working and weathering the storm, that's a man who knew, a man who felt it coming. A man who possibly understood that the life he was allegedly still connected to was about to collide head-on with the life he was trying to build on camera. And what did he choose to do? He didn't run. He didn't leave the country. He posted a video. He sat with it. And then he got arrested. I'm not saying that makes him noble. I'm not saying the alleged murder, if he did it, was justified in any way. But there's something deeply human and deeply tragic about a man who built an entire public narrative around growth and redemption, sitting in an LAPD jail cell charged with felony murder. That's a story that doesn't have an easy ending. And that's where we're at right now, gang. Aunt Jefe, Maurice Shellman, No Jumper co-host, South Central rapper, 8-year RICO survivor, and one of the fastest rising personalities in hip-hop media, is behind bars with $1 million bail and a felony murder charge hanging over his head. Adam22 went straight to TMZ with language that set the internet on fire. His, as far as I knew, and not really in the streets anymore, statements are being dissected by everyone who knows how to read between the lines. Whether that was calculated distancing, accidental oversharing, or something else entirely, the internet has already formed its opinion. This case is still developing. LAPD hasn't released full details about the alleged murder. The full evidence picture hasn't been made public. There's still a lot we don't know. But what we do know is enough to understand that this is serious, this is real, and this is going to be one of the biggest stories in hip-hop media for a long time. If you learned something new today, if this hit different, you gotta smash that like button and subscribe if you're not already locked in with us. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Adam22 snitched? Do you think Aunt Jefe can beat this? Do you think No Jumper recovers from this? I want to hear from y'all. And if you want more content breaking down the stories nobody else is going this deep on, the next video is already dropping soon. We don't miss over here. I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace.